Hello, I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. The purpose of this channel is educational in regards to atheist and deconversion issues. Also, I throw in a lot of Bible theology in that because I am an expert in both of those. I have degrees in both. And, you're free to share these videos as much as like. Everything actually helps build the channel and build, recognition. So sharing videos, liking, subscribing, and commenting all have positive effects for the channel. So I would appreciate that. I've been gone for a couple weeks. I didn't get to do last week because my wife was convalescing. So I'm going to do about 2 weeks worth of comments in a row here. So this is kind of week 46 and 47 via. Can you imagine this? 47 weeks and a few more weeks. This channel will hit its 1-year anniversary. Seems hard to believe to me. Maybe for that I'll redo my deconversion story to make it a little bit more better, more modern. But I want to deal with the comments, and so that's where we're going to go. And I'm going to go back a couple of weeks ago. It's almost been 2 weeks to a comment by Marks Tevens. He says, thanks for your reply. If people can fly airplanes into the building in the name of betraying friends should be easy game. I think her best friend is now converting. She is going through a lot lately. We are keeping in touch, and I slowly explained to her that what happened when we talk a lot and why she believes what she believes. We'll see how it goes. It takes time and patience to deconvert somebody. Stay strong. Yeah, it does. This is why I'm a compassionate anti-theist. I can put up with a lot of religious mumbo-jumbo, I guess is the way I would put it, despite the fact that I am an anti-theist. It's because these things cause one to have a very difficult mindset to unravel. So yes, I'm saying be patient. Deconversion takes time. And once you do deconvert it, depending on how deep and how long you were in it, it can take a while to recover. So I just encourage you to just keep working at it. It is what it is. You're not going to be able to change anything. My next comment comes from Ed Rabyd. Now, before everybody gets confused, this is my oldest child, and he does subscribe to the channel. I think he was the second or third subscriber. I can't remember. And so I know he follows what I do. So he hears these comments from time to time. And this is talking about the personal part of deconversion when I hit 50 subscribers. And he writes this. In fact, he was the kind of inspiration for a video that I did earlier this week. He says, I recommend the book by Jonathan Haidt, The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. Very good social science. One of the points in the video is all the good in the world based on religion can be done by secularists. Well, that's certainly true from an actual action standpoint. In this book, one of the major my height is even though anyone can do good, statistics show the majority of charity and humanity are spearheaded by religious groups. Yes, others can do it, but many choose not to. Whereas religion is, in my opinion, very good is the sense of community it can create. We as atheists should make it a point in our mission to spread our thoughts, to be able to acknowledge things religion has done well. There are certainly many issues with religion that disgust me, but I don't have any others to be able to live in a cooperation and love with those who believe. The goal should be to pursue the progress of understanding. I would agree with the fact that they do have a good understanding of community a lot better than atheists. I think that's because atheists, we don't gel simply as people that don't believe. We're free thinking on a lot of other things. However, I'm going to get to a second your second comment in these last 2 weeks when I did my video in response basically to this question about whether or not religion does any good. I'm not the first one to postulate this question, but there is something that I, as a political scientist, and some other YouTubers have actually beat me to the punch on this, but basically looking at secular societies versus heavily religious societies based on certain metrics and seeing which of those societies deal with the problems better. It may be very well be that religious societies create charities and take action against certain social ills, but it's also the social ills because they're religious that they're creating. They may need to create these safety nets and these various, religious charitable actions simply because their religious nature causes some of these problems. So it's a much more complicated question than we first see, but I'll get to that second question later when I run into it. Freebird of Reason, thanks for sharing, as very usual, very interesting for the next. Keep on with the great talks, and well done on the subscribers are rising. Yes, I hit 50. I actually jumped up 4 after that video, so I'm up to 54 now. So thanks to everybody for their work. A few responses to my quick update video that was only 2 things long. Is like Freebird of Reason also says, love from the UK to your wife. I hope everything goes well. Myself have been poorly. Had a test for COVID due to symptoms negative, so I'm free again. Again, I really hope for you both. Just a quick update on my wife. She is doing much better. She's up and around. She's visiting. She's taking care of people again that she takes care of. And she's gone today, taking care of her father. So it's like she's back to herself. She just has a weight restriction limit right now. But she basically, had something that had been dealing with for 2 years, of feminine issue nature, and now it's had more of a permanent solution. So hopefully she'll get better, but she's got about a 6-week window to get to full recovery. But that first week she was just here, and she was, sleeping a lot and taking naps, and also needed a little bit of help to get through daily tasks for a bit. And there just wasn't any time to record anything. So thank you for your hopes for her. Glad to hear the wife is up and about after surgery. Wishing for full recovery for her. She's doing well. Keen writes, that was Bedge Price. Keen writes, no need to sympathize. Life is short. Your family is much more important than some YouTube video. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. But I also, it was more of me trying to just let you know what was going on. So that was that's been kind of an interesting scenario, but thanks for the support. I appreciate all 3 of those comments. Thank you. A comment I received 5 days ago on my, has atheism changed your politics? Anna Galez says, Trump caves media sins, so he got it. Trump is a con man, not a businessman. A little political science lesson for all of you out there. You are the person, the media will never portray the person they're against with any kind of goodness. So even if Trump did something good, if Trump, there's been an argument made that if Trump cured cancer, people would still criticize him for the cure. And that's because you can be conditioned as a human being to see certain tribalistic features as whatever. My problems with Trump are not so much that he's a con man. My problems with Trump is that he's a panderer. But all politicians pander. So, but he's just really good at it. He's a relentless self-promoter. He was a businessman too. I don't think you can say con man over businessman. I think he's both in some ways. But, the problem with Trump, and particularly with evangelicals, and this is my personal opinion, is that evangelicals started to lose their support. People ask me how he lost the election. I'm going to make it very quick. I think a lot of Republicans went to the voting booth. They voted Republican on everything else. Now, the reason I can say that is because the Democrats lost almost every other election. I mean, yeah, they won the White House, But I'm going to tell you, the Democratic election strategists, the national election strategists, went out of their meeting shaking their head because they didn't turn any legislatures like they were hoping to. They didn't, the Senate's probably going to still be Republican even after the Georgia election in early January. It's just, I don't see Georgia losing both of those to the Democrats. I think one of them will go Republican at least, if not both. They lost ground in the House. The Democrats really lost most of the elections. The only real thing that they got out of it was the White House. And if the Senate doesn't fall in line, then all the major reforms that the Democrats wanted to do, they're just not going to happen. The Republican Senate will just block them. And we'll have at least a couple more years of doing anything, the government not really accomplishing much, which is fine by me as a libertarian. On the other hand, we have to look at this. There's a lot of accusation of fraud. I'm realistic. I have a lot of friends that are Trumpites, and they come to me because I have a political science degree. What do you think about these fraud situations? I said, the problem with fraud is it's very hard to do. If you're going to do it, it would be with mail-in ballots because they're out of sight, so you don't know where necessarily a lot of mail-in ballots came. I just don't see that even if all the accusations of voter fraud were true and you flipped them all, I still don't think there's enough votes for Trump. Trump barely won last time, and I think a lot of Republicans forget that he didn't win the popular vote then. And as far as the Electoral College went, he squeaked by with a few of the elections, but not all of them. There were quite a few that just did not pan out as they did last time. So, he won, like my home state of Michigan, he won that by like 10, 15,000 last time. Well, this time he lost it by quite a bit. And I think a lot of it had to do with, the documented lies. The problem with Trump is he would just lie and just assume anything. So, that's my end of my political commentary. I don't really have a dog in the fight, so I just I stay out of things. On my rabbit round, does religion or faith do anything good? Keene said, one of your best commentaries, I laughed a couple times, one being the story of the axe murderer still having an axe. The issue of wastage of life is what hit me the most of what you meant. It is true that the more time one has invested, and then finding out that you're a part of Wizard of Oz and one of the Munchkins is not even a flying monkey is hard to take. Having the curtain pulled back to show not even a man pretending to be a wizard is even worse. What I know is that you can't blame religion for me not making the hard choice to deconvert earlier. I'm just glad to have the time and truly live while knowing that I can't change the past. And I would agree with that. Thanks for the comment. My humor comes from a very dry sources, mostly my maternal grandfather, who was a very Welsh English type guy who had that very Welsh English dry sense of humor, and I kind of pick up on that. Plus the sarcasm of my uncles, my mother, and a little bit of my father's slapstick comedy on occasion. But mostly I've just, I've learned the art of the one-liner from time to time, and I don't even think it's funny half the time sometimes, but a lot of other people do. I have a tendency to laugh at a lot of things these days too. But yeah, the time lost, but the question still remains, does religion do anything good? My son again. I agree with you 100% that fundamentally any secular person can do good that a religious person does, just as religious people can do evil. So can a secular person. The question is this. Is that really what the question should be? Just because you can do it doesn't mean people do it. In Hyde's book, he investigates on charity and volunteering. In all religious studies, people give and volunteer overwhelmingly more than secular people. Here's one such study. I looked at it. Yeah, it's accurate. I don't dispute that part. Okay, I don't dispute that religious people do more charitable acts. The question is why? Why are they necessary? Is it because of community over here? It's called inspiration. Could be. It's interesting. The community aspect matters in my mind. No one would question that parents tend to become more empathic once having children compared to those without kids. Fundamentally, a person without children and have the same empathy as people without parents, just as there can be parents who have no empathy. That being said, the stats show that those with kids will generally have more empathic traits. Churches can attach themselves to communities, which may be the reason religious people give and volunteer more. I think Haidt's book does a good job of showing that a mixture of secular, religious, conservative, liberal, and other dichotomies is what make human beings able to continue progress. All elements of society have good and bad. Nothing is universally good or bad. This is my issue with the idea that one thing causes all issues. A particular secular world would be just as woeful as a religious world, purely religious world. I'm going to challenge that last statement because I don't think it proves out to be true. While it is true that religious people are very community-oriented and they create a lot of community action events, and they seem to take from their religion an inspiration to do these events, what they end up doing is they end up causing many of the problems that they end up having to create charitable acts to fix that wouldn't be created. I'm going to refer you, there's a guy named Aaron Ra on the internet that does videos. He did a talk a few years ago that's on YouTube, and I'll link that above my head. And he talks about how religion reverses everything, and that how it does some fundamental damages. That's why you have to have all these charitable acts, is because religion does some damage to society that it tries itself to fix that wouldn't be necessary to fix in secular societies. There has been some good in comparisons. I'm going to link another one. Holy Kool-Aid actually did a very recent series of videos comparing Islamic societies and secular societies, Christian societies and secular societies, on very various metrics of what it is to constitute a good society. And what you see is religious societies tend to cause more violence, cause more stuff that they have to then create charitable institutions to overcome. The question then becomes, the real question is, what is it about secular societies that they don't create these damages and they don't create these problems in the first place that makes them better? The murder rate in secular societies is lower. The list goes on. We actually can compare based on a lot of metrics, and this has been already done. You've given me one book recommendation. I'll probably order that on Amazon and put it on my list to read. But I would give you one. Christopher Hitchens says, God is not great, how religion poisons everything. He goes through pretty meticulous detail, various things that have happened in history, and in very recent history, where religion is always in the way or poisons everything that society does. And he makes a pretty strong case. I would contend that a secular society, a purely secular society, would have less social ills because religion creates social ills. Probably a good example here in the United States is twofold. One involves teenage pregnancy, because religious people have a tendency to have one viewpoint on how sexual issues in youth should be handled. And so your teenage pregnancy rate in religious states in the United States tends to be much, much higher. I think in the video I talk about with Aaron Ra, he mentions the fact that his own home state of Texas not only is very religious and not only leads the country in teenage pregnancy because of the abstinence-only education, but leads the country in second or repeat teenage pregnancy. In other words, these girls are, by the time they're 19, they have 2 kids. And that is fairly common in religious societies. And that's just one social ill that's created because of religious belief. So yes, they can have a stronger sense of community, and they do get out there and do more charitable acts. But the problem is they need to, and they wouldn't need to if it wasn't for their religion. So I'm not saying the issue this is why I'm an anti-theist. This is why I oppose religion when they do stuff. And if somebody asked me, what would I do in such states? I said, well, first of all, I'd have a lot more to do as far as fighting the good fight. One of the other things that a lot of these religious states do is they try to teach creationism. Well, I'm sorry, creationism hasn't put together even a full-fledged theory of a scientific theory of how their thing works. And that's just sad. But somehow they're being taught, and something that has some because a scientific theory, it's an unfortunate naming convention, but a scientific theory is the highest plateau for science. If you can get your hypothesis to the level of theory, it means it's backed by so much facts, evidence, and studies that it's going to be very difficult to refute. And, the theories of evolution, the theories of cosmology, these have the actual evidence behind them, and creationism doesn't, but it's taught as if it's history. And when you start teaching religious texts as history, I think you have a problem. So you're misinformed. These things are demonstrably proven false, and that's the problem. And you end up with a lot of social ills and a lot of educational problems that wouldn't exist at all if religious people didn't create them. And so I would contend actually that religion creates more problems than it solves. That if you're going to put it on a percentage scale, I would say 80% of what religion does is cause problems, and maybe they create enough charitable works to lead the drive in 20% of them. So what do we as atheists need to do? I think we need to tap into our human empathy more. I think this is why, don't get me wrong, I think liberals, for instance, tend to be more empathic, and that's why they hold some of the views that they hold. But, I don't go down that road completely, because I realize sometimes empathy can get the best of you. I don't have a problem, for instance, with people being selfish, because I think selfishness is inherently in part of our evolution, but it can be a virtue, because if you are independent and self-reliant, then you aren't a burden to others, and that's not necessarily a bad thing to do. But I would challenge the notion that somehow a secular world would be just as woeful as a religious one. I think it's better. And we already have ways of comparing secular countries to religious countries, and on a lot of metrics, the secular countries are much, much better morally and socially and economically. So, I disagree with that statement, mostly because I don't think it's backed up by evidence. Freebird of Reason. When I was a Christian, I did more charity. I fed the homeless. But when I look at myself, and to be honest, it was the Christian part that I did it to show people I was a Christian in the hope that I could speak the gospel. I went around town at night giving food. Around my town late at night giving food. I stopped because they started to wait in one spot. One night I was there, and they're kicking the crap out of each other. That caused these people to come together, and I thought God had placed me there. I was deluded by religion. Religion poisons the mind. I know my brother would not tell my mother that she will burn in fire and hellfire unless she gets down on her knees and cries out to God. He can't help that he thinks that he is doing the right thing and has no choice. But this is a terrible message that comes out of his mouth. He can't sense that it is mental abuse. It is somehow becomes easy to tell your mother that your parents were not Christian and they are not saved, putting fear into your own mother. This is what religion does to a person who, I am sure, would himself be horrified to hear that this is done to his mother if he was not now a Christian. The morality has been stripped out of him. Although my mother is Christian, it is not the right Christian accounting of his interpretation. Now, disgusting when a person is brainwashed like that. The strange thing is I once was like that myself, but now I'm free to see the cruel nature of cults. Thanks for sharing. Keep smiling. Yeah, this is also part of my contention that religion does more harm than good, that secular societies actually would be better. I, 'cause you can have two people that are ideologically the same politically and, have the same values when it comes to family and friends. But if they have a religious difference, you can literally have two Christians and in the same family, and one Christian, because they're a little bit more fundamentalist and a little bit more, this is the way you have to believe or you're going to hell, can still cause problems even within a Christian household. I don't know too many atheist households that have that problem, or secular households for that matter. I'm sure they do, maybe they do, and I have never heard of it. But the issue here in family relationships is how to deal with it. According to some of the people in my family whose faith that they were to believe, their father, who was father, son, spouse, whatever, who was originally a Christian, is now going to hell. And I don't think that they really want to believe that. But that's what their religion tells them to believe. I can't think of a more dishonest and hurtful thing to believe about a loved one. But I still come up with the thing, well, if you really cared about me going to hell, and it turns out to be true, or let's say it's reversed. I know if it was reversed, I ended up in heaven and somebody else in hell, burning in hell, I'd be in front of the throne, even if it was a stranger, saying, how is it just to burn this guy forever? And it seems strange to me that God that quote unquote loves everybody is going to send some of the people that he loves to burn forever. That seems to be a very man-made thing to me, to put fear into people's heart. But religion thrives on fear. It thrives on fear of the unknown. And it uses that fear to manipulate people, which is why I say it does tons more harm than good on a daily basis. But yeah, one thing leads to another. So Happy Christian Reaction 2 days ago, does religion or faith do anything good? I recommend the YouTube channels Inspired Philosophy and Jonathan Prigo. If you watch all the videos, I believe you'll find your faith again. What makes them different is Inspired Philosophy videos about old earth creationism and talks about various evidence for the resurrection and the existence of the soul. All very science-friendly videos compared to most Christian YouTubers. I'd watch Jonathan Prigo's recent discussions with atheists on his channel. He comes at Christianity through the symbolism angle. Both these guys make arguments that are logically stimulating, and I think an atheist will have an easy time getting into. All right. I spent probably 6 or 7 years wrestling with my faith. After I decided to become an atheist, I listened to a lot of YouTube's channels, including Inspired Philosophy. I have listened to both them and Jonathan Prigo. Here's where I find them unconvincing, having listened to a good chunk of Inspired Philosophy. Inspired Philosophy's problem is he won't get past the a priori assumption that God exists. Most of his logical fallacies basically involve begging the question. He assumes the existence of God. He doesn't try to prove it. And so he comes back around in a circular reasoning most of the time. He uses a lot of the classic arguments for God, but I don't find him so convincing. As far as old earth creationism, what's the difference between that and non-creationism? I never have, oh, God used the Big Bang. Well, you haven't proved that God is involved. As far as the resurrection goes, it's not historically verifiable. And anybody who's watched people like Apologia or others, that when you look at Holy Kool-Aid, a whole bunch of these atheist YouTubers have taken on the various quote-unquote apologetics for the resurrection and beat the living crap out of them. The biggest problem I have with the resurrection is this. Most of the evidence that's brought forward can't be verified, and the claim of the resurrection is what has to be proven. If you came up to me and said, or if I came up to you and said, I saw a leprechaun the other day, do you have to prove that there aren't leprechauns to prove me false? No, you don't have to. You can react to whatever reasons I give for saying I saw a leprechaun. But to me, proving that God exists is really interesting. A lot of apologists want me to treat their religion as special, which is a fallacy called special pleading. I treat all religions now the same, okay? I am very skeptical, all spiritual views. I think the last spiritual thing that really died in me was the idea of karma, that what goes around comes around. You have to get used to the idea that some people are going to get away with shit, and some pretty evil shit, and they're never going to be punished for it. And some people are going to have good happen in their life, even though they just don't deserve it. You know, it is what it is. I have heard of people talking about Christianity through the symbols, and what's the point? I mean, I don't have to believe, for instance, I don't have to believe in Odinism to practice the 9 noble virtues. Okay, I don't have to do that. I don't have to believe in the Norse gods or any of that stuff. And the problem I have always had with Christianity as symbol is symbols can be endowed with any meaning that you want to endow them with. And that's the problem with them. And so you can take that in any direction. I'm sorry, there's just way too much evidence against the Bible being anything but another book. It's certainly not inspired, and it sure as hell isn't inerrant. You can believe that all you want, but that's just not true. And if we can't trust the Bible, the resurrection story and all the rest of the stories in it are immediately historically suspect. As I've gone through my series on the Tall Tale of Jesus, the one thing I've had to remark about is we're basically dealing with this large body of oral tradition we have no verification for. Mark does the original writing, and everybody else seems to copy a good chunk of his stuff. That's not 2 or 3 witnesses. That's just one. I'm sorry. I think the story of Christianity at best is a legend about a guy named Jesus of Nazareth that maybe had a bunch of followers that loved him very much. And when he was crucified and probably thrown in a mass grave, which is why you won't find the body. I mean, how are you going to identify a body 2,000 years old thrown in a mass grave with a whole bunch of other people? Wouldn't happen. Just wouldn't happen. And as far as finding my faith again, faith is a dishonest position. It has no integrity. You are literally believing in something you can't prove and treating it very seriously. I refuse to do that ever again. If my faith were to come to me, it wouldn't be faith. It wouldn't be trusting and believing something I can't prove. There would be proof of the existence of God. There's proof of all this stuff, not a bunch of philosophical notions that may or may not be true, not a bunch of symbolism that can be interpreted a bunch of different ways. Sorry, I've looked into a lot of this stuff already. I've read some of the best apologists out there, and I found all of their arguments lacking. I mean, all the main arguments for the existence of God are begging the question when it comes right down to it. You're assuming the existence, like argument from design. Well, this looks designed, so therefore, well, it appears to you to be, therefore there must have been a designer. You know, it appears to be designed, so therefore it must be a designer. Just because it appears to be designed doesn't mean it is. Okay, maybe you as a pattern finding animal kind of figure this stuff out, but it's not designed just because you assume it is. Okay, so you're assuming a designer, and you're assuming that designer is God, but you haven't proven those 2 steps. That's the argument from design in a nutshell. But all the main, the moral argument, all the rest of them have all failed to me. And inspired philosophy, he rehashes them and he tries to put a modern spin on them, but the logical fallacies remain. So, yeah, I've looked at some of these guys already, and quite frankly, yeah, they're better than most, but all of them are still trying to cling to something that they can't prove, and that's the problem with faith. Faith is a dishonest position to me. It's like, there's 2 major things that have changed in my mind since leaving the faith. One is that faith is a dishonest position, and 2, obedience is not a virtue either. It just is something. Obedience is just submitting your will to somebody else. You can submit your will to somebody evil too. So I don't look at obedience as something as rebellious or anything like that, like I used to, disobedience, I should say, or revolution. Sometimes I think disobedience and revolution are necessary for self-preservation, but also for preservation of society, because there are people that get in power that take us down dark paths and they need to be stopped. So that's kind of that. But, I'm happy for the comment, but I'm going to tell you right now, after wrestling with this for 6 years before becoming an atheist, and then being an atheist in the pulpit for 3 years, being kind of a pagan, atheist, deist, whatever, for a long time, trying to figure out what I was, I certainly just didn't believe in the Bible. It's a human book. It's far too human to be the Word of God. And I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. But yeah, sorry. I mean, what you've said isn't convincing to me. I've looked at the apologists and I just don't have any respect for them. So that's kind of where I'm at, because they really don't address the questions like they should. All right, well, that's 2 weeks worth of comments and questions. I'm sorry if this video is a little bit longer than what most of you are used to, but I felt it was important to get all the questions down. Hopefully very soon. My wife is supposed to have a doctor's appointment middle of next week, and after that she can go back to work, and that'll allow me some more time where the apartment's empty and I can do some more videos. But in the meantime, thank you for stopping by, and thank you for the last 2 weeks of comments. It's been very enjoyable. I'm going to continue probably with some of my ramblings on why I don't think secular societies would be just as bad as religious ones. I think that's a fascinating topic, and I may look into some of the data on that myself. But also want to get back to the tall tale of Jesus, full tilt. The problem with right now, Jesus's ministry tends to be very repetitive. There's some interesting highlight points, but it's the same stuff, different names over and over again. And that tends to be the boring part. What I really want to get to is, of course, as we get closer to Passion Week and the resurrection as a whole at the end of the story, these are the parts that I think are of far more interest to most people and far more stimulating a conversation. But in the meantime, thanks for stopping by, and hopefully someday I can make you a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Rabyd, also known as the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.